何なのだこの振動は。
部部隊いやこの無の界すべてを激しい力の流れが揺らしておる。
はい、でも一体まさか。
そんなの決まってるじゃないですか。
でしょうね。こうでなくては。
ビルス様、何かコメントは。
来るぞ。
Hello everyone, this is Luxon, and welcome to my review of Splatoon 2 patch 1.4.0. If you saw the last video, you already kind of know how I'm going to do this, so I'm going to jump right into it. But I've sort of figured out how I'm going to actually rate each individual patch rather than just talking about them. Basically, each change I'm going to rate either I think it was positive, negative, or I'm neutral for. A positive one is one that I think impacts the game in a positive way, furthers the meta, makes things more balanced, that kind of thing. Negative one is the opposite. Neutral one is sort of ones where I'd say that didn't need to be changed, where I don't think it hurt or helped anything, it's just kind of there. Yeah, it's good to remember that neutral isn't necessarily bad, so something that has a lot of good changes and a lot of neutral ones will still probably be rated as a good patch just because there wasn't any bad. Even if it doesn't overtly help anything, a harmless change is a lot better than a bad one. So, starting out, I'm just going to be reading directly off the patch notes from support.nintendo.com, the 1.4.0 tab. So let's do this. First thing is the change to the way S Plus works. You can only drop 5 S Plus tiers at a time, and it's harder to get to the OK line in S Plus. They're trying to fix the rank issue. It might work. It's sort of going to do a better job of kicking out people from S Plus who don't deserve to be there, but it still doesn't change getting there in the first place, so I don't really think it's going to change the amount of people in S Plus too much in the first place. I don't know, I could be wrong. I want to say this is a negative change, just because they're ignoring the actual problem and trying to patch up the wrong thing. So yeah, I'm gonna list the rank change as a negative one, just not because the change itself is bad, but because they're ignoring the actual issue here. Next up are some Salmon Run bug fixes, which, honestly, I'm always going to list bug fixes as good, just because there's nothing wrong with removing a bug in the game, and it's not nearly a neutral, because a lot of these are, it's an issue causing certain combinations of main and special weapons to appear, stage clipping. It's fixing things that made the game more difficult or not work correctly. So, these are all good changes. Now, Spectator Mode, this is good. Fixed an issue causing incorrect animations to play when objects were damaged when viewing from a certain player's perspective. I've never seen this bug myself, but that's good. It makes the Spectator Mode look more accurate to the actual gameplay the players are seeing. And then, this is a really good part, especially for people commentating tournaments and the like. The sound effect from taking damage now plays when viewing someone's perspective in Spectator Mode. So if you're spectating someone, they get shot, you actually hear the thing, so you know they're getting shot. You hear the sound effects for that as if you were playing there. That's good when you're spectating, you can actually kind of see if the person's getting hurt. It's a good thing. It'll make some commentary calls a lot easier too. Let's see, next is just the other fixes, which are other changes, which I think are just more bug fixes. Yes, so yeah, these are just bug fixes, so that's all good. So far, only the rank changes were bad, but we haven't gotten to any of the multiplayer stuff yet. And under the multiplayer tab, there are a bunch of main, sub, special, gear, updates to a bunch of those under their own different tabs, but these just look to be a bunch more bug fixes. Yes, there was some... They made ink resistance better. They fixed a bug where you would only receive the benefit of ink resistance if you were wearing 3 pures of it. So, moving while shooting with a shooter or dually, previously you wouldn't get the ink resist bonus unless you were wearing only ink resist in every slot. That explains a lot of weird problems I was having with ink resist in the past, so I like this. It's actually useful now with the weapons I play. They changed storing charger shots a little easier. You can maintain your charge if you get forced out of squid form in enemy ink. They fixed another bug fix with charge shots, which is good. Decreased the knockback distance from hitting a roller out of ink or in midair. I guess that's decent. I mean, actually, that is sort of good. If you get hit by a roller or is out of ink, and you don't get knocked back as far, you can just hit them and take them out easier, which is good. You can punish someone for not paying attention to their ink better. Camera issue with rollers and Brellas was fixed. That's good. A Brella aiming issue was good. There are a lot of buffs to Brellas this update, which is pretty cool. I'm hoping to start seeing people play them more often because they're fun to play. Just don't really... They weren't very good in the past, so I'm going to start picking up Brellas. And let's see, an issue with discrepancy in movement speed while trying to shoot a Brella with no ink, as opposed to shooting one with ink in the ink tank. So I guess there was your run speed would be different if you tried to dry fire a Brella with no ink, compared to if you actually shot it with ink. So I guess those are made the same. I don't know if it was slower or faster. There's an issue with sloshers, which I've also never heard of, probably because I don't play them, where ink would, it says an issue causing sloshers to shoot ink from a higher position than they appeared to, so I guess the ink stream would come out of a point above the actual bucket of the slosher. Okay, I don't know, that's just the hitbox fix, that's good, I guess. I'm listing all these as good still. These are mostly bug fixes and little quality of life improvements to certain weapons. An issue occasionally allowing opposing players from standing behind a splash wall to be splattered when a bomb hit the edge of the wall. Now, this is not the thing where if someone's standing under a wall and you throw a bomb at it and the explosion hits them, they'll die. This is if someone's standing on the other side of the wall, you hit the side of it with a bomb and they still die. That doesn't really make sense, so that's just a bug fix. You can still kill people who are doing stupid things with their walls with bomb. It's just, you can't kill them in a stupid way, basically. Curling bomb speed issue was fixed, where they'd slow down weirdly when thrown on a surface with a slope. That was fixed. An issue with bombs will now ink the floor when exploding at the edge of a stage. I guess that was like if there was a splatter suction bomb teetering on the edge, or a curling bomb about to fall off and it exploded, it wouldn't ink anything, so that's been fixed. I guess it inks whatever part of the radius is actually over the stage now. I don't know. Entirely. It's good. Bombs work properly now. That's good. Next issue was causing the predictive range of the sub weapon. So when you hold down ZR, or when you hold down R and you're aiming your sub, that would show incorrectly when ready in an ink storm, while also equipped with a point sensor toxic mist. So weapons with either those two subs and Inkstorm as their special had a bit of a bug fixed. Then, okay, this one I have seen before. Inkstorm used to not ink the same way if the storm itself ran into a roof or something above the stage, like if it was clipping into, I don't know, I think it's the storms above the ridge on Reef, but there are places, like there's the pendulums and Shipyard, there are stages where there's stuff above you, so that would screw up the way the Inkstorm covered turf. That's been fixed now, it'll work the same normally. This one's interesting. Bubbles from Bubble Blower that pop after the end of a match will no longer ink. And that's interesting, because bombs that explode after the end of the match will still ink. I guess it might be because bubbles cover more ground. It could be to prevent like that weird thing where after the game's over, you can somewhat cause the control over a splat zone to break with if something explodes after the end of the match. I don't know. I feel like if they let ink strikes go in after the end of the match. They should let bubbles do the same thing. So I'm gonna, yeah, I don't really like that change. I think if you can get something to blow up after the end of the match, it should still count. If it's inconsistent with what they did in the first game and what they're doing within the second game, so I don't really like that. Okay. The next thing, they basically turned the bubble blower into its own weapon. Your movement speed would be dependent on whatever main weapon you had beforehand, so you'd actually move faster if you were using, say, Forge, compared to Heavy Deco, since Heavy Deco's a heavy weapon. So now Bubble Blower has the same movement stats regardless until you revert back to the main weapon. Now, in Rainmaker, they did the same thing to the Rainmaker, basically, because heavy weapons like E-Liter and Dynamo get a 10% swim speed reduction. That would also stack with the swim speed reduction for carrying the Rainmaker before, but now since you're literally swapping out your main weapon for the Rainmaker, it doesn't do that, you just get the Rainmaker speed nerf. So that's good, you can sort of carry the Rainmaker if you're using a weapon like that now. Bug fix in Rainmaker, talking about where the Rainmaker respawns after killing the holder. Then fixed a bomb clipping issue in Reef. Fixed an issue of people falling through the stage in Inkblot. I never heard of that one. Fixed an issue causing people to fall faster in certain areas of Moray than others. That's good. It's always good. Then Manta Maria issue, another clipping thing. And then... okay, that's cool. I forgot this was a thing, but Drop Roller Inkjet is now made even better. If you used Inkjet and were using Drop Roller, you wouldn't be able to roll correctly when coming back down from the Inkjet. Now that's been fixed, so you can. And that was the last, besides the Bubble Blower thing. I really like all these changes. Other than the ones that I kind of said didn't need to happen, but most of them are good. A lot of them are bug fixes, so there's not really much neutral here. But on to the main weapon changes, and these are the good ones. These are the let's break the meta and make it a new meta now. Splash-O-Matic got a range buff and a turfing buff, which is good. It doesn't really change it to... it's still like a hyper accurate and rapid fire weapon, so it still has its niche just because it turfs better. I guess people weren't really using it because they couldn't get special much with it, so that's good. 52 got a range buff as well. So actually didn't increase its range. It increased its range where it does maximum damage. So it increased its kill range as opposed to its turfing range. There's a difference there. NZAP got a buff. It's now considered a light weapon, so you'll move a bit faster when not shooting, so it's similar to Splatoon Jr. in that regard. Also got a run speed increase while shooting, and made it easier, and I guess the equation for determining how the ground gets inked is changed, so it's more likely to land around your feet, which is good if you got a movement buff, so you can actually use that. I like this one! Splattershot Pro and 96 are like my two main weapons. Pro got a 67% buff to the speed of its shots, so that's pretty good. It doesn't really kill faster, but you're more likely to shoot exactly what you're aiming at, even if it's moving. It also got an accuracy buff, so you're even more likely to shoot what you're hitting at. You also got a run speed buff while shooting, and a turfing buff. Pro is good now. Long-range weapons were really bad before this patch. Now they're pretty good. Like, there was a tournament. Long-range weapons are actually doing good in tournaments now. They really, really weren't before then. The only real sort of broken thing is Splashdown now. 96 got a damage buff. It got basically turned back to what it did in Splatoon 1, so it does 62 damage per shot. It also got an accuracy buff, so a 96 that can actually hit things, and is basically a guaranteed 2-shot unless they're getting insane fall-off damage. It's pretty good. Again, long-range weapon getting buffs. Each 3 also got a shot speed buff. A lot less than Pro did, but still good. It also got an accuracy buff, as well as an ink the area around your feet buff. So you'll notice that a lot of the weapons that got really big buffs were all long range, which makes a lot of sense, because they were bad. So Clash Blaster got a radius buff. It will now damage more areas and ink more. So It's not necessarily a long-range weapon, it just makes it more usable, I guess. Carbon got actually all rollers got an acceleration buff. So, no, actually only Carbon got an acceleration buff, so you'll reach top speed faster with it. And then got every roller got a buff to baller damage. Everything besides Dynamo got 40 and Dynamo got 60, which is really funny to me. And Carbon also got, I guess, a change to its ink spread equation, so you're more likely to hit the ground in front of you instead. Which, I don't know, Carbon's still kind of bad, but whatever. Then Vanilla Rollers got a buff to the width of the ink path it inks while rolling at maximum speed. That's really specific. I don't know how often you're even going to get to maximum speed with a roller, but it's there. I guess it's not bad. Doesn't make it any worse or anything. It also got the same thing Carbon did, where you're more likely to hit the ground in front of you. Dynamo got a bigger max speed ink path width thing buff than Vanilla Roller did. You also got a slight, specifically says slight, no percentage increase, but a slight increase to ink coverage when flicking over an area that you're above. So that weird thing where the Dynamo would barely ink anything, if done from above, that's, I guess, been changed a little bit. Not making Dynamo great. It's better. Still not the way it was, but it's a little more usable now. Flingza got a vertical fling movement speed buff, so I guess you can sort of deflect yourself to the side better. Increased horizontal fling range and damage radius, so Flingza can hurt better. I'd say people are going to be using Flingza more than, or the amount of people picking up Flingza or using it more is going to be more than the people picking up Dynamo after this patch. Flingza got a much cooler buff. It's not a Carbon that flicks at Splat Roller time now. It's something in between the two. Inkbrush. Inkbrush and Octobrush also got a 40% buff to baller damage because that's how the developers patch things. They just make the thing that was OP in the last patch nerfed into the ground and make everything able to destroy it. Guess that's a thing. Inkbrush, now you actually used to, if you were running through enemy ink, you would get a movement and damage penalty, but now that doesn't happen. I don't know. I don't think it did that in the first game. I guess that was either a bug or just a thing that they thought they needed to balance the Inkbrush. Thought they need to make that weapon worse. I don't know why, but it's fixed now, so Inkbrush is usable again. Octobrush just got the baller buff. Let's see. Squiffer and every version of the vanilla charger, including scopes, they all got a 30% increase to damage to ballers, again, because instead of just decreasing the health of the thing, they just make everything do more damage to it. I don't know. Charges weren't really changed much. E-Leader got a really weird buff. The ink coverage when hitting a wall has been increased, so I guess the line that it paints when hitting a wall has been increased in width, which I guess makes it easier to swim up if you're using it as a path. So it's good. E-Leader can do its sort of support from the back thing better again, even though it doesn't have burst bombs or whatever. And they also got a 30% baller buff. Bamboozler got a 50% buff to your run speed while charging it. And this is like it was out for what, like 3 days when it got this buff, so people were memeing about, oh, they're buffing a weapon that's not even out yet. But no, it was out for a few days before the buff came out. They just kind of figured that they needed to buff it before it was even out. And it also got a 30% buff to ballers. Bamboozler is just really fun to use. I might, despite never playing charges in my life, I might even try to pick that up just because it feels good. We'll get to it when we get to the Brella and I guess sort of the dualies, how their run speed buffs are made. It just feels fun to play. And Bamboozler got that too, so I could roll with it sometimes. Okay, now if you're watching the version that had the whole like 1.5-minute Dragon Ball Super edit, then this is the GooTuber. If you were watching the version without that, then that means the video got copyright claimed, and I uploaded a version that didn't have it instead. Let's just say I wasted a lot more time than I should have editing Inkling Hair on a bunch of, like 1.5 minutes of Dragon Ball episode for one joke about the GooTuber getting buffed a lot. So, GooTuber, charge shots can now be stored when not at maximum charge. That means if you have any charge stored and go into squid form, that will be held. That's sort of a double-edged sword because you have a glowing beacon of light on you all the time, so just get good at stealth. This sort of makes it a more flanking weapon. You can now, there's a 5-frame buff to the amount of time between popping out of the ink when releasing a stored shot, and that shot actually going off, so that's good, you can get your shots off faster. It got a damage scaling change to the same as the E-leader, so it's basically a short-range E-leader that's good for sharking and stuff, because well, not sharking, flanking, because you store charge better, so it got the same baller damage buff as everything else did. So it's actually, I know I made the joke, it's not good per se still. It still needs a buff to be like one of the go-to weapons, but it's a lot better than it was before, and that's still pretty cool. I think GooTuber is actually going to be not used now, if that makes any sense. More people are going to use it than before. So, I know you're probably looking for another big meme after that intro if you saw the version of the video with it, but no, that's all I got about the GooTuber. And we're going to move on to the Mini Splatling, which got a damage buff from 28 to 32, and a bit of a run speed buff. The effective run speed is still less than it was in the first game, but Mini moves fast again, which is great for all you Mini mains out there, because it wasn't really good before. It was kind of like a worse version of whatever weapon has its kit, which I think is Vanilla Splatter Shot? I don't know. I'm not going to edit that in. This is a long video as is. I don't have the time to edit it. But, dualies. Every version of the regular dualies and the Dapple dualies got a decreased, like, your dodge roll has, like, end lag on it, where you can't really move after dodge rolling besides aiming. So that was decreased by a full 8 frames. That's a large amount of time. What am I trying to say? It's a good buff. You can move like more faster and tactically. The amount of time between doing a double roll is the same, but you can start running again after rolling a lot sooner. Dually Sculpture got a turfing buff. It got the same dodge roll buff, and you're now able to move after performing a dodge roll but before performing another action. That sounds weird, but it basically means that unless you do a double roll, because if you do a single roll and then wait for the end lag to start, you can't roll again until after that's done, but if you do a double roll, that's not changed. And you can't throw a sub-weapon or jump or anything like that during the end lag. What this means that during the end lag of a dodge roll, you can walk, but you can't do anything else you normally could do. So it's like your dodge roll auto-cancels into a state where you can only walk and shoot for a little bit, it's really weird. It makes more sense if you play it. You're just kind of skating around a little bit until you can start moving normally again. It works. It allows you to be more nimble with it, so I think it's pretty cool. I don't really play Dually Sculptures. I prefer vanilla dualies, and the dodge roll buff was pretty good for that so far, so I'm not complaining about any of these changes. I might pick up Sculptures more, I don't know. I haven't even been doing good with Jet lately, so I might drop Sculptures at all and make Pro my longest range weapon, but that's besides the point. Moving on to the Vanilla Umbrella and Hero Umbrella. The time in between shooting and the umbrella actually opening was decreased by 8 frames, so you'll be able to guard yourself sooner. Then the amount of time between the umbrella starting to open and it completely opening was decreased by 1/6 of a second, so again, you're shielding yourself sooner. Run speed buff while the umbrella is open, so you can move to shield yourself better. It's general theme of being able to shield yourself better. Umbrella's actually being able to be used for what it was designed for. I like that. Let's see. The next thing is individual shots do more damage. So if you hit someone indirectly, or not with the full force of the shot, you'll be able to do more damage than you would before. So that's pretty good. You could do... It's sort of like... If you treat the shotgun part of the umbrella as a blaster, it's sort of like the indirect damage was buffed, but the direct damage is still the same. Shooters, Splatlings, and Dualies get a 30% damage reduction to the umbrella shield, which is kinda good. Just, again, your shield can actually shield things against the more rapid-fire weapons. That's pretty good. The umbrella, if it's been released, it will no longer just dissipate after coming into contact with a baller. I guess it will still deal chip damage to it as it touches it. And then, another 30% damage buff to Ballers, because Baller can't be good anymore. Tentabrella got huge buffs. It was really bad when it first came out, but now it's actually usable, and it's, again, really fun. They made it really nimble. It's not as nimble as the Vanilla Brella, and maybe even even things like the Dually Sculptures that also got quote-unquote nimbleness buffs, but it feels really cool to use. So, after shooting, you'll return to normal run speed, a sixth of a second faster. It got a similar indirect damage buff to the Vanilla Brella. A little bit less damage buff, but I think Tenta has more shots, so that doesn't really matter anyway. And it also got a slight maximum damage buff too, which kind of only matters for objects and not actual Inklings, because its max damage was already a one-shot. It got the same 30% damage reduction from certain weapon classes as Vanilla, and the same Baller changes, where the Umbrella won't be destroyed immediately, and it does more damage to Ballers. Tentabrella is really cool. Because of the standard movement speed time thing, it sort of has the same effect as Bamboozler's buffed charge speed and the Dually Sculpture's dodge roll thing. You can sort of like skate around and sidestep people. It's again hard to describe, but it works and it's really cool. Now this is a fun part. We're living in a world where the arrow spray had to be nerfed. It got basically a bunch of turfing nerfs, so it doesn't charge special as fast anymore, which kind of doesn't matter now that Baller's bad. I don't know. And then Slashing Machine also got a slight turf nerf, so I guess it's just ink coverage, it's not a damage thing, so it doesn't really make it worse. I kind of think the arrow spray and Slashing Machine changes weren't merited, but everything else was pretty good. And moving on to special weapons, also got some buffs. Tenta Missiles now do 50% more damage against Ballers, because Baller can't be good now. Stingray got double damage to Ballers, and then the sort of thermal ink effect that Stingray had, where you can see opponents behind things, that got a bit of a change, so you can see people that are a little further away than before. Inkjet also double damage to Baller, because why not? Curling Bomb Launcher, just increase the distance the bombs will fly from the launcher. Ink Storm, 150% buff to Baller damage. A lot of these things are just Baller damage, so you can kind of see what they were trying to nerf. Bubble Blower, it's made easier to burst. It got a 20% damage buff to the amount of damage caused to them by people on your team. You got a third of a second faster to switch back to your main weapon after the Bubble Blower goes away. And again, double damage to Baller. Let's see, Baller now does 150% extra damage to other Ballers. It got a sound nerf, of all things. It's louder now, so people can hear it better. Let's see, the radius of minimum damage, so like, the radius where it will start to hurt you, was decreased when Special Power-Up isn't used, so with no Special Power-Up. And then Special Power-Up was also buffed, sort of, so if you're using only Special Power-Up, you'll basically have the same damage radius of the old Baller, the 1.3 Baller. And speaking of that, moving on to the Gear Abilities tab, which I'm going to skip to Special Power-Up just for good transition, although there were some other things that were affected before then. Tenta Missiles. When Special Power-Up is used, its effect has been buffed greatly. Another 2/3 bigger than before. If you're using Special Power-Up with Ink Armor, the amount of time in between activation and when the armor actually goes up is also made smaller, as well as the duration of the armor itself. Inkjet's buff to special duration with Special Power-Up has been halved, but it also increases the explosion radius of the shots, so it is easier to hit people with. Baller, as well as the health buff, also increases the radius of minimum damage, so Baller's still really bad now. And then a bug fix for Ink Storm, which, yeah. Sub Power-Up would increase the throw range of the Ink Storm before, which is kind of a mistake because it was sort of thrown the same way as a sub weapon. Now Special Power-Up will increase that as well as duration. And I'm gonna copy these so I can pin that as to make that a pinned comment on my special power-up guide. So I'm not remaking that video, I'm just adding the buffs. So now jumping back up in the list to Inksaver main, certain weapons, mostly long-range ones, the diminishing returns are different, basically. Wearing only Inksaver main will have the same effect, but wearing a little bit is better now for Pro, Luna, H3, Dynamo, E-Leader, and Tentabella. All weapons at a high ink consumption. That's pretty good. Run speed up affects Splatlings better, so again, Mini can go fast again. Quick Super Jump got the same sort of Inksaver main buff. Wearing 3 Pures of it will have the same effect, but wearing a little bit will have less. Actually, no. The jump time is the same scaling, but the time between the charge time before you jump up, so the time where you're actually vulnerable is changed. So it just sort of changes the effect of Quick Super Jump a little bit. Sub Power Up. Oh, things I need to change for the Sub Power guide too. Nice. Okay. Good thing I didn't read these patch notes before I actually started making the review. Okay. Ink Mines also increase the duration opponents stay marked for, as well as the radius. Sprinklers, basically Sub Power Up's effect was buffed on them again. It's another 50% buff. Or no, buffed by 150%. I thought it was turned into 150%. So it's now 2.5 times as good as before. That's ridiculous. Point Sensor is the same marking duration effect, and Squid Beacon, the Super Jump effect decrease, or the Super Jump time decrease, has been increased by another 50%. So Sub Power Up's even more useful. Both Sub and Special Power Up are more useful, which is good because I made videos on those. If you don't watch those, Cold Blooded got a 20% buff to the amount of duration of being marked that it cuts off. So the marking will only last 80% as long as before, and it also increases the area in which the player is immune to Thermal Ink, Haunt, and the Stingray, so it's harder to get tracked by those not point sensory tracking methods as well. Opening Gambit has the same thing it did before, but it also adds an unknown amount of ink resistance to it as well, besides the other abilities it buffs. Last Ditch Effort now gets... it's a buff to its multiplier, so it would usually boost a bunch of stats by 1.8 times, now it's 2.4 times, so it's even better. I still stand by never using either Opening Gambit or Last Ditch Effort, and just stacking an ability that'll be useful to me the entire game, but I don't know. Haunt got the same buff as... Haunt and Thermal Ink actually got the same buff as Stingray, where it gets a bigger radius of being able to see people, so that's good. Drop Roller actually got buffed as well. You used to have the same sort of immobility after using Drop Roller as dodge rolling with dualies, so that was completely removed. You can go directly into playing or moving normally after the roll, so that's good. A lot of the bad abilities were buffed, except for Respawn Punisher. The reduction of the added amount someone's special meter is decreased when killing them with Respawn Punisher was tripled. So you think, okay, that's good, that makes sense. But so was the reduction of your special gauge if you're killed while you're wearing Respawn Punisher. That was also tripled, and it was more to begin with. It was already 1.5 times the reduction an opponent got to begin with, so you're just hurting yourself more for wearing Respawn Punisher. I don't like Respawn Punisher was never good, but this just made it outright... no, it doesn't make it outright, it just makes it even worse. I don't really know. It's not good. Don't wear Respawn Punisher, kids. And then last but not least, certain weapons also got special point... the amount of turf you need to cover to get special changed again. Aerospray MG got changed, so it's a little easier to get that. Sloshers got changed, Mini got changed. Everything was buffed by 10 points, except for Imperi Dualies, which were decreased to where they were before, back to 180 from 200, so that was buffed by 20 points. Borellas got increased... everything that was buffed, which is Aerospray MG, Vanilla Slosher, Mini Splatling, and Vanilla Dualies, was buffed by 10. And Perry got buffed by 20. Splattershot, Vanilla Splattershot got nerfed by 10, 52 got nerfed by 10, L3 got nerfed by 10, Sloshing Machine and Vanilla Umbrella got nerfed by 20, so that's just a little balancing of getting specials. That's okay, I don't really think there's anything wrong with any of those changes, so yeah. How long have I been talking for? Oh boy, I'm approaching 34 minutes, so I'm gonna end this pretty quickly. I like this patch, other than the fact that it basically means Splashdown is now a completely uncontested powerhouse in terms of best special in the game right now, which, I don't know, just return it to the way it was before 1.3 and it'll be fine, like all the specials will actually be balanced. And the S Plus change, which just kind of shows they really don't know what they're doing in terms of fixing the ranking system. Just make matchmaking back. I want Japan back. Give me Japan back. Other than that, this was a good patch. A lot of my weapons got buffed. A lot of weapons that weren't used got buffed. A lot of bad weapons got buffed. The arrow spray got nerfed. They actually needed to nerf the arrow spray, so any patch that actually has to do that, you know is going to be a doozy. And I think this one, in terms of competitive play, besides the Splashdown thing, I think this ended up pretty well. So, next week, I'm going to start uploading scripted Splatoon 2 videos. That one's going to be about choosing your control scheme. And if you're just here for the patch notes reviews, well, whenever 1.5 comes out, there'll be another one of these videos for that. So, until next time, this is Luxon, signing off.